environmentally sustainable and economically sustainable.
That will most likely have an impact on surgeries and energy.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Ignite News. I'm Dimitri Perdikaris.
And I'm Scott Summerhays.
And Scott, this past week here at Mohawk College was a pretty big deal because it was International Education Week and there were plenty of things going on around campus.
Yeah, well, here at Mohawk College, we have students from around the world, and International Education Week gives those students the chance to share their cultures, their food, their dance with all the other students at the college. Ignite News reporters actually had a chance to be there and hear some reports sharing those experiences with you.
Mohawk College's International Education Week kicked off today, featuring a multitude of events and seminars sharing culture, food, and more with students on campus. Lucy Labadici, the events coordinator, said that the event has been steadily growing year by year.
International Education Week this week has been going great. We've had a lot of student interaction, a lot of engagement. Later today we will be in the Student Center. They are going to be doing a number of events there with some performances at the Arnie and a cultural food fest. Students were invited to bring in their recipes from their home countries, and the chef at the Student Center has selected a number of them. Will be cooking those for students to try.
The Arnie featured a cultural food fest featuring food from all over the world, from Caribbean jerk chicken to Asian Szechuan noodles and a Mediterranean combination of salad and greens, accompanied by some reggae and calypso in the background, set the atmosphere for the week.
Actually, it's very healthy. It's very healthy and very delicious, and they made it really, really delicious. It's very good.
I had a salad. I don't know what nationality it was. I had some chicken, noodle stir fry, and some curry and pita. It's all very delicious, very different.
International Education Week is more than the sum of its parts, with some of the events that are taking on today only being the tip of the iceberg. Every year the event is getting bigger and bigger, educating students from home and abroad more and more about the other cultures and the students that are coming to Mohawk College. For Ignite News, I'm Greg Rosser.
The Stonewalls pub was packed with blindfolded people last Wednesday night, all for the Sunset Dining in the Dark experience. The event was organized by volunteer group Sense for Change in order to raise awareness for the blind and raise money for the CNIB. Len Baker is the executive director for the CNIB in Ontario and believes that the Dining in the Dark experience is a great event.
I think that this is an awesome event. I think that the number of volunteers that are behind the scenes making this happen and the support we're getting from the community. There's over 90 people here tonight that have a real interest in the work that CNIB does in their community, and they're showing that by coming out on a work night to participate in an event that's designed to help raise awareness about the work that we do and raise money to support the work that we do in the community. So I think it's incredible.
Chef Mike Benninger explains how the menu was chosen very specially for the night.
Chef Fred, the actual chef here at Stonewalls in Hamilton, he and I sat down and thought to ourselves, let's combine heat and sweet, texture, crispy, tangy, familiar. We want things that smelled good, that were also captivating for the senses, that weren't only hot or cold. We want to kind of combine it because it's all about senses that you don't have when you can't see.
Fatima Marza admits that dining in the dark was not an easy task, but it helps her understand the clients she works with.
I work for the Canadian Deaf and Blind Association, so it really gives me an understanding of what my clients go through, so it's great.
Here at the Stonewalls pub, eating with a blindfold on proves to be a tougher task than it looks. Reporting for Ignite News, I'm Marcy Colbert.
Now, obviously, multiculturalism is a big part of International Education Week. And Scott, you can't celebrate different cultures without embracing diversity as they do here on the campus's Social Link.
Yeah, and part of embracing diversity is being a little sensitive about the language you use. In fact, Alicia Glant, one of our reporters, sat down with a local activist to talk about how she's combating hurtful language used on the internet. Here's the report for you.
University of Alberta is studying the use of 4 phrases on Twitter. And every day at midnight, they restart the clock. And if you go to nohomophobes.com, you can see this real-time tweeting happening, and they count how many times the word faggot is said, how many times the phrase "that's so gay," the phrase "no homo," and dyke. And faggot is the top used word by far and wide. Thousands and thousands and thousands of times in a 24-hour period is that word used. And it's the most violent, offensive word to refer to a gay man, because it refers to being burned at the stake and using gay men's bodies to burn people at the stake. That's why faggot was transferred to that.
A lot of people use this offensive language, and for many reasons. Terms such as "that's so gay" and "no homo" are rampant in popular culture. But Deirdre wants people to understand that just because it's popular, it doesn't mean that it's acceptable.
I think the most incessant phrase, of course, is "that's so gay." I have a great concern that people use the word gay as an offensive insult. Taking somebody's identity and using it as an insult is not just offensive. It actually causes damage to, especially young people's psyche if they do identify as gay, and then all day long they hear people say, "That's so gay," meaning bad, stupid, wrong, or ugly. Men, young and old, will embrace themselves, will embrace each other, or comment, "Oh, that's a nice shirt, buddy, but no homo." To deflect their, just what should be a simple opportunity to make a compliment. So, these phrases, I think people think they're just so funny. And
the word queer used to be a term used negatively towards the LGBTQ community, but Deirdre thinks that the community is starting to become more comfortable with that word.
It's not offensive when it's an identity, unless somebody is labeling you that. So when I walk down the street and someone yells, "Hey, you big queer," that's a little different. But with that reclamation of language, you can kind of pick yourself up and say, "That's right, I am. Thanks very much."
Dimitri, I'm not originally from this city, but after moving here, it's only getting better and better, and I love living here.
Of course, and Hamilton City Council, Scott, actually has a plan to make living in this city better for the future. Rachel Williams has the report.
At Wednesday's meeting of the General Issues Committee, City Manager Chris Murray updated Council on the progress of the 2012 to 2015 strategic plan. The plan is made up of 3 priorities, 13 objectives, and 64 actions. Halfway through the 3-year plan, Murray was happy with how far the city has come.
We're certainly much further ahead than we were about a year and a half ago. For example, intergovernmental affairs policy has been developed. We're advancing the cause of the web. In fact, we're as well moving on lands in the waterfront to get them back so that we can develop them.
Of the 64 actions, 13 are complete. All are aimed at achieving the city's overall vision of being the best place in Canada to raise a child, promote innovation, engage citizens, and provide diverse economic opportunities. Councillors were generally happy with the status of the plan, but a few drew some attention to issues that continue to be ignored. Ward 5 Councillor Chad Collins pointed to the lack of strategy for brownfield property.
Most people would be surprised who live outside of our community, or even those who live in our community, that we don't have a strategic plan, a comprehensive plan that looks at what we're going to do with all those contaminated properties that line our bayfront area. What's our plan to remediate those and reuse them after the companies have picked up and gone?
Ward 8 Councillor Terry Whitehead expressed concerns over distribution of finance.
When you look at the city as a whole, you have to ensure that whatever we do is inclusive, which is a huge issue, and equitable.
Although the city manager is happy with the progress made, he sees more opportunity for improvement.
It's really important for this community to spend some time looking at, the next 10, 20, 30 years, because, imagine the last 20 years what happened. If we had known back in 1990, there would be this thing called social media and how it would influence the way people think and act. If we had known things about the economy back then, would we have planned a bit differently?
The next phase will look at how to better engage the city's community partners and academic institutions. Reporting for Ignite News, I'm Rachel Williams.
Council Chambers was host to presentations by city staffers about next year's fiscal outlook. General managers of 6 divisions discussed their preliminary findings. According to their reports, the city is looking at an increase of 2.8% in annual spending.
That's just the beginning. They're giving us the go-ahead, so we're basically giving them some direction where we'd like to see the cuts, where we won't like to see the cuts. We don't want services to be cut.
Unfortunately, for Ward 11 Councillor Brenda Johnson and city staffers, the provincial government just cut $7 million to deal with the city's homelessness, and that might not be where it ends.
We get provincial downloading all the time, and we're constantly struggling with it. We have programs that we're running right now into this city hall that the province really should be taking over and doing.
Councillor Chad Collins had his own issues with the budget process.
We have a long list of projects that are in line, they're in queue to be funded over a period of years, and so you start to look at those projects and you wait for them to come to the time when they're going to be funded, and then you see this long list of new projects that's bumped, some that have waited for years in the book, and so that's concerning.
According to Collins, there are 137 projects from past years that have not been started but are in the budget. This represents $51.6 million worth of work. These include improvements to local schools, playgrounds, and other public works projects.
The more projects we see in the books, the more pressure there is on the tax levy.
What the city has guaranteed is that the process will be more transparent via the use of social media. Entrepreneurial journalist Joey Coleman is excited about the decision.
It's important for the city to engage with citizens, especially on the budget, especially in an election year, because it's going to be the main topic of discussion.
Although there are still lots of decisions to be made, what we do know is that planning for 2014 is going to be a daunting task. Reporting for Ignite News, I'm Rachel Williams.
You are a classy man, Scott Silverhays.
Well, good manners can get you a job, Dimitri, but actually Nick Scopanero attended an etiquette dinner to teach you proper manners of how to eat food for a professional meal. Here's the report for you.
The dinner etiquette event held at Carmen's Best Western Sea Hotel was hosted by former college professor and etiquette expert Fatima de Valentin. She acknowledged the mistakes of her guests by placing a sticker on their name tag.
If your hands are below the table, give yourself a sticker for each hand below the table.
Fatima began to explain all the rules of dinner etiquette, such as how to use your napkin, proper place settings, pouring water for your guests, passing the salt and pepper, how to eat certain foods, how to do a proper salute, and placement of cutlery. A couple of guests shared their experience on the overall evening.
I didn't know that you're supposed to keep your hands on the table. I didn't know that you're supposed to take your napkin right off as soon as you got to the table. A couple other things I didn't know about holding your utensils the way that you were supposed to, so it was excellent.
This is one of our most exciting events, and it's always a great mixture of students, alumni, and guests. It was a great evening. It's always different.
Fatima explained what inspired her to start teaching etiquette skills, especially to students.
It really was born out of my experience as a professor in the college level, teaching my students the curriculum, having them skilled in the area of study, sending them off to the world of work, and then finding that they were struggling. And it was really coming back to etiquette, manners, presentation, and I felt that my students really needed extra support around etiquette.
Mohawk students not only leave tonight's event with a full stomach, but they also left with a full set of tools to take with them in the world of work.
Oh, Nick.
For Ignite News, I'm Nicholas Scopanero.
Hey, Dimitri, have you seen any good movies recently?
Scott, I haven't recently, but with the holiday break just around the corner, I intend on catching up on a few.
Yeah, well, Oscar season is coming up right after that, and there's a lot of hot picks coming out. One of them is 12 Years a Slave. Chris Luckett, our movie reviewer, has a review on that movie.
You care less about my loss than their well-being.
Master Ford is a decent man.
He is a slaver.
Under the circumstances.
Under the circumstances, he's a slaver. But you truckle at his boot. No. You luxuriate in his favor.
I survive. I will not fall into despair. I will offer up my talents to Master Ford. I will keep myself hardy till freedom is opportune.
There are lots of great movies that aren't very fun to watch. Nobody watches Schindler's List or Requiem for a Dream and says that was fun. But dark or depressing movies can serve a very important purpose, as they often make for the most powerful films. And 12 Years a Slave is one of the most powerful of the year. Based on a true story, 12 Years a Slave tells the account of Solomon Northup, a free black man in 1841 who was abducted and sold into slavery in the Deep South. Northup endured horrific abuse for 12 years before he regained his freedom, eventually writing a memoir which inspired this movie. Important movies have been made about slavery before, like Glory, Amistad, and the miniseries Roots. 12 Years a Slave is arguably more powerful than any of them, largely because it personalizes the incomprehensible atrocities of slavery. By starting with Northup's life of freedom, his slavery feels all the more restrictive, driving home brutal realities that are often glossed over in movies like this. Director Steve McQueen very effectively puts you right next to Northup during his unwavering 12-year quest for freedom, forcing you to experience the cruel life of a slave and daring you not to look away. The reliable Chiwetel Ejiofor gives the best performance of his career as Northup. It's riveting, it's heartbreaking, and it's shaping up to be the odds-on favorite for Best Actor at the next Oscars. This is acting of the highest caliber, and it would be worth seeing the film for him alone. In addition to Ejiofor, though, 12 Years a Slave boasts a fantastic cast that includes Paul Giamatti, Michael Fassbender, Benedict Cumberbatch, Paul Dano, and Brad Pitt. Every one of them brings their A-game to the movie, filling each scene with impressive acting. 12 Years a Slave is not an enjoyable movie. By no means should it be, because the subject matter really isn't something in which to find fun. But it's worth noting before you head to the theater that this is a very dramatic drama. It has a hopeless tone for much of it, and the weight of the movie can be crushing at times. Truth be told, though, that's partly what makes the movie so great. 12 Years a Slave gets 4.5 stars out of 5. For Ignite Entertainment, I'm Chris Luckett.
The Presidential Palace, the party of the year. Eyes bright, chins up, smiles on. I'm talking to you, Katniss.
20 or 30 years ago, film adaptations usually didn't have to worry about following their source books exactly. But the recent surge of adaptations with rabid fan bases has led to filmmakers being afraid to cut scenes that worked in the book, but don't in the movie. Catching Fire is a better movie than The Hunger Games was, but it still ultimately falls into the same traps by treating its source novel as gospel. A year after the events of The Hunger Games, victors Katniss and Peeta have returned to their lives in District 12, but are continually haunted by nightmares and PTSD flashbacks. Katniss's defiance of the rules of the previous Hunger Games has led to sparks of rebellion amidst the volatile, oppressed districts of Panem.
We have to go, Gale, before they kill us. They will kill us.
What about the other families? Huh? The ones who stay. What happens to them? People are looking at you, Katniss.
I don't want anyone looking to me.
President Snow wants to quell any insurrection before it starts and blames Katniss for the uprisings. Along with the new game maker, Snow creates a Survivor All-Stars edition of the Hunger Games, allowing for the re-reaping of Katniss and Peeta and giving Snow the chance to eliminate Katniss for good. Catching Fire tells a somewhat similar story as the first movie, while crafting more complex characters and darker tones than the original had time for. What could have felt reheated instead feels amped up in scale and stakes. It also doesn't hurt that this had twice the budget of The Hunger Games, as the visual effects are much better this time around. All the returning actors are excellent, particularly Jennifer Lawrence and Donald Sutherland, and new additions like Philip Seymour Hoffman, Jeffrey Wright, and Jenna Malone fit right in. If there's a flaw with the movie, it's its slavishness to the pacing of the book. The first half of Catching Fire is all character development and setup, which worked much better in literary form than it does cinematically. By the time the games actually begin, the movie's almost 2/3 done, which barely worked in the first film and here just feels uneven. The final book of Suzanne Collins' trilogy, Mockingjay, is being split into 2 movies, like the Harry Potter and Twilight climaxes. Carrying the momentum of Catching Fire forward will be the filmmaker's biggest challenge, as this one does mostly everything right and does it better than the first one. But just maybe, by stretching the story over 2 movies, Mockingjay will be forced to accept being different from its book.
Remember who the real enemy is.
Catching Fire gets 4 stars out of 5. For Ignite Entertainment, I'm Chris Luckett.
Dance Dance, Call of Duty, Kerplunk. If you're a gamer, there was something here to please you. Tuesday at Mohawk College's Arnie Pub, a video game tournament brought in all sorts of gamers to join in some good old-fashioned rivalry.
We have lots of gaming clubs, from video game clubs to traditional board game clubs. So we do something like this so they have something where everyone can join, they can express their interest. It's something fun and that everyone likes doing.
The event was hosted by company We Got Game. Dave Miller brought in Xboxes, PS3s, and Nintendo Wiis for students to game on. 2014, he says, will bring changes that students should look forward to.
In the new year, exciting times for students where we're going to have the Xbox Ones and PS4s bringing different schools, giving them a little flavor of the new exciting things that are going to be happening in the new year. And the good thing about it is, most students are not going to be able to afford the new systems, but our first pre-order, we have 16 consoles ready to go day one for students to enjoy.
At the end of the day, this was just another way for students to unwind and enjoy different activities than the ones usually offered on most weeks at Mohawk.
It's pretty fun, actually. Like, I enjoy board games. I'm part of the board game club at Mohawk, and there's some pretty cool things going on here.
It's a lot of fun. It's something I can actually do on like pub nights because I don't drink, so I don't go to pub nights. So I'm actually having fun.
This event was a perfect way to show off your skills and rack up the most rarest of credits, bragging rights. Reporting for Ignite News, I'm Ivan Bond.
Dimitri, do you like music?
Of course.
Yeah? Well, do you like Hamilton music?
I'm all for supporting my local artists.
Well, there's actually a new girl in the scene now. Her name is Danielle Bowden, and she just released a new album. Ignite News reporter Shannon Brownlee sat down with her to talk about her craft.
Danielle Bowden's song, Sun Will Shine, is about wishing for warmer weather in the midst of a Canadian winter. She may not have to struggle with the snow much longer if her career continues to blossom. She plans to fly south to ply her trade in the country music capital of Nashville, where many artists have launched their careers.
Just stay there for a month and play lots of cafes, lots of bars, anywhere I can pretty much. Just get used to how that city works, and it's a huge music city.
Bowden, who grew up in Hamilton, has built up a loyal local following. Although she was not nominated for an HMA this year, she was delighted to be included in the events.
So it was really nice that there was some local people that have seen me before that kind of recommended me for the show. So I was pretty happy that I actually have my name out there somewhere, you know.
Danielle plans to head to Nashville in the upcoming year and has high hopes for the future. Reporting for Ignite News, I'm Shannon Brownlee.
We're in the D-Bark right now, and as you can see, we've got some recreational basketball going on. And actually, speaking of basketball, Scott, this past weekend, there were a couple of big games for the Mohawk Mountaineers men's and ladies basketball teams. They're going up against the Humber Hawks, who are always a tough matchup. And we actually have a couple of reports on the games. Here they are for you.
It was the first of a series of tough matches for the Mohawk men's basketball team as the Mountaineers hosted the Humber Hawks at the D-Bark. The Mountaineers put pressure on the Hawks early to take a 94-80 win. Guard Matt Fennell came up big for the Mountaineers, scoring 29 points and going a perfect 17 of 17 from the free throw line. Mohawk big man Taylor Dahanyuk helped keep the Hawks out of the paint and pulled down 15 rebounds and blocked 5 shots. Despite some flashes of brilliance from Humber, Mohawk put together a strong second half behind the efforts of Andrew Sicatini. The Mountaineers forward led the way, scoring 30 points and grabbing 16 rebounds. Strong, aggressive play was a plan coming into the game.
So basically our game plan was, rebound hard, take it straight to them, and we did just that and came out with the win.
Coach Brian Jonker says their winning streak came against the bottom of the division and that the real test lies in the games ahead.
This is certainly the tougher part of our schedule right now. We've had a couple 3 weeks here where we played a little bit of the teams in the bottom half of the standings, but this stretch of Humber, Fanshawe, Sheridan to finish the first semester is a daunting one, and it was nice to get the first win today.
The Mountaineers travel to Fanshawe this weekend and host Sheridan at the D-Bark next week. For Ignite News, I'm Neil Reyes.
After a poor first quarter, the Mohawk Mountaineers women's basketball team was unable to complete a comeback against the visiting Humber Hawks on Saturday afternoon, losing 73-72 and falling to 4-3 on the season. The Mountaineers played a strong second half, closing a point gap that had stretched to 13 at times. The fourth quarter was back and forth, with both teams swapping multiple leads. Humber eventually scored the game-winning basket in the final 20 seconds of play. Mountaineers coach Kevin Duffy commends his team on their strong effort, but also sees tons of room for improvement.
This is one of the games I told the girls in the change room. They worked hard, they executed. Probably our rebounding would be number one, though. If anything, we gave them a lot of second chances, especially in the second quarter. We didn't box out very well. So that's probably, in this game anyway, was our weakest attribute.
Mountaineers guard Carissa Brown felt the momentum turning in Mohawk's favor late in the game.
Yeah, I was in the fourth quarter. I don't know how much time was on the clock, but both when Karina shot the three down there against their zone and then Alex shot the three. The total game
changed. Like you could tell like we were down in that couple of seconds and then we just got up. So that's definitely when like the game went our way.
The team is focusing on improving the rebounds in preparation for their next game at Fanshawe on Friday, November 29th.
Both teams had runs. Both teams got out to leads. Both teams fought hard. I think at the end of the game, just probably us, not executing that inbounds play and giving them the ball back really hurt us. And I think that our rebounding in general, especially like I said at the defensive end, was pretty poor, and I think that was a turning point for them.
Reporting for Ignite News, I'm Brady Livingston.
And that's all for us on Ignite News at Mohawk College. You can also check us out online at ignitenews.ca and on Twitter at Ignite Online. I'm Scott Summerhays.
And I'm Dimitri Pertikaris. Thanks for watching.
Environment.